The little girl stood in the cold, clutching a torn teddy bear, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Can you give me a hug, please?" What happened next made everyone around stop and stare, and by the end of this story, you'll understand why one small act of kindness can change two lives forever. So stay with me till the end, and if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us what being human truly means. It was a cloudy evening in a busy city street where people rushed past each other like strangers in a race. Cars honked. Vendors shouted. Phones rang. But nobody noticed the little girl standing near the bus stop except for one tired single father named Ayan. He had just finished a double shift at a warehouse, his back aching and his mind heavy with worries about bills, school fees, and whether he was being a good enough father to his 6-year-old son, Sammy. Ayan's life had not been easy. 3 years ago, he lost his wife in a road accident. Since then, he had been mother and father to Sammy. Every morning he packed lunch, braided Sammy's messy hair attempts, even though Sammy was a boy who hated it, and rushed to work praying he wouldn't lose his job for being late again. He had learned to live with exhaustion like it was a permanent shadow. That evening, as he waited for the bus, he noticed the girl. She looked about 7 or 8. Her dress was faded and too thin for the cold weather. Her shoes were different sizes. Her cheeks were dirty, but her eyes were full of something deeper than sadness. Fear. Loneliness. Hunger. The kind no child should ever know. People walked around her like she was invisible. Ayan looked away at first. Not because he didn't care, but because he was afraid. Afraid of getting involved. Afraid of not being able to help. Afraid of seeing his own child in her place. But then she walked up to him slowly. "Uncle," her voice was barely audible. Ayan looked down. "Can you give me a hug, please?" The world around him felt like it froze. He wasn't expecting that. Not money. Not food. Not directions. A hug. For a second, he hesitated. His mind flooded with thoughts. What if people think something wrong? What if she has parents nearby? What if he makes things worse? Then he saw tears forming in her eyes. And something inside him broke. He knelt down slowly, making sure he was at her level, and opened his arms gently. The girl stepped forward like she had been waiting her whole life for that moment and wrapped her tiny arms around him tightly. And then she started crying. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent shaking sobs. Ayan held her carefully, like she was made of glass. He could feel how thin she was. How cold she was. He didn't know why, but his own eyes filled with tears too. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe." After a minute, she pulled back and wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Thank you," she said. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Meher." "Where are your parents, Meher?" She looked down. "I don't know." Those 3 words hit him harder than anything. He bought her hot tea and a sandwich from a nearby stall. She ate slowly at first, then like someone who hadn't eaten in days. He didn't ask too many questions right away. He just sat with her. Piece by piece, her story came out. Her father had died last year. Her mother worked as a cleaner but disappeared 2 days ago after going to work. The landlord kicked Meher out because rent wasn't paid. She had been sleeping near shops, eating leftovers when she could. Ayan felt anger rising inside him. At the world. At fate. At how unfair life could be. But he also felt something else. Responsibility. He called a local child help center and explained the situation. While waiting, he stayed with her, telling her small stories to keep her calm. When the social worker arrived, Meher grabbed his sleeve. "Will you forget me?" That question destroyed him. He shook his head. "Never." The center took her in, promising to search for her mother and keep her safe. Before leaving, Meher hugged him again. This time, she smiled. Days passed, but Ayan couldn't stop thinking about her. He visited the center every weekend. He brought storybooks, small toys, and sometimes just sat and talked with her. Sammy met her too. At first, he was shy. Then they became like siblings. Months later, the center confirmed Meher's mother had passed away from illness. There were no relatives. Ayan didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he applied for foster care. The process was long. Interviews, financial checks, home inspections. There were days he thought he would fail. Days he cried silently because he was barely managing one child. But he kept going. Because he remembered that night. That hug. 6 months later, Meher stood in his small apartment living room holding a tiny backpack. "Is this my home?" she asked. Ayan nodded, unable to speak. Sammy ran forward and handed her a drawing that said, "Welcome home, sister." Meher started crying again. But this time, they were happy tears. Life wasn't magically perfect after that. There were struggles. Money problems. School challenges. Emotional healing. Nights when Meher woke up scared. Days when Ayan felt overwhelmed. But there was also laughter. Birthday cakes made at home. Movie nights on the floor. School awards stuck on the fridge. And hugs. Lots of hugs. Years later, Meher stood on a school stage receiving an award for community kindness. When asked what inspired her, she said, "One day, I asked a stranger for a hug. He didn't walk away. He became my family." Ayan cried in the audience. And maybe you're wondering why this story matters. Because somewhere today, someone is standing alone, hoping someone will see them. Kindness doesn't require money. Sometimes, it just requires stopping, listening, caring, and maybe, giving a hug. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that humanity still exists in small moments, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because every time you do, you help share stories that make this world a little softer, a little kinder, and a little more hopeful. And remember this. Sometimes the smallest request, "Can you give me a hug, please?" can become the beginning of someone's entire new life.